I'm Nick Hughes, and this is Founders Live Conversations.
And so for everyone here, I want to welcome you to Founders Live Conversations. This is a really, really awesome and exciting Founders Live Conversations that we have today. I am Nick Hughes. I'm the founder and CEO of Founders Live, and really excited today to have two individuals from Aloa Outsourcing, software development. And today we're talking about outsourcing, product development, and really tips around how to hire smarter and, really determine like when is it the right time to be bringing in product development from a third party and external source, who to look to for that, what sort of processes. And so, I want to pass it off to David, that introduce yourself, and then we'll have Dawei introduce himself as well. But let's bring David in and welcome you and say hi.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Definitely appreciate it and happy to be here. My name is David Paulin. I am a co-founder of Aloa. We are a platform for outsourcing software development for startups. We got into this space because we ourselves were looking to expand our dev team, and we were really frustrated with the existing accessibility of software development, especially if you aren't venture backed, if you aren't technical yourself. Brings about a lot of complexity, and the current roadmap of navigating outsourced software is really convoluted and not necessarily positioned for the everyday person. And our mission is to create a world where anyone can innovate freely. We saw software as a barrier to innovation. So that's kind of how we got obsessed with this problem. I'll hand it off to Dawei, one of my other co-founders, so he can introduce himself.
Hey guys, Dawei Lee here, one of the co-founders of Aloa. I serve as the head of sales. So I'm overseeing all of the client services, the ways in which clients interact with our partner firms, use our platform, and stuff like that. So over the last 3 years, we've had the privilege of seeing over 100 different startups all over the US, parts of Europe, Canada, outsource their product development through our platform. So hopefully we can shed some light on outsourcing for you guys today.
Great. Thank you both. Really, really great to have you both here. And we're just excited to partner with Aloa as well. And for all you members, you will start seeing, more, if you haven't yet, more information around what they offer. We've shot a really cool commercial, and there's a conversation that we've already had with their CEO. But today, what I would like to do is hand it off to you both, and let's walk through a bit of your discussion points that I think will be a really great way to tee up a group conversation. I do have I've got some questions, but hey, as a group here, important that you all just note your questions, even write them down in the chat box, and we want to address them, whatever it is, around things specific to their business, things general to outsourcing, things general to product development. Let's just have a great group conversation. So boys, cool. I'll hand it over to you.
Love it. Awesome. So again, we're a platform for outsourcing software development. Running a business is hard. Software development shouldn't be. That's kind of the goal that we have, to help entrepreneurs and businesses alike successfully access software development so they can really focus on their business. So today we're kind of here to chat with you just about outsourcing 101, whether you are actually looking to outsource with a groups like us, or if you're just looking to outsource yourself. These are just kind of our tips and best practices of things you should keep in mind, and things that we would recommend as you're kind of going through your search and looking to go through this process.
Awesome. We wanted to start out, David?
Yeah, we'll just switch to the slides.
Okay, cool. So so before starting off the first tip, Nick has asked us to provide up to 5 to 6 tips for you guys. So I think the first thing to note is that the common misperception of working with a software team is that the moment you have a good resource or a good team, all of your problems are going to be solved, right? So, but that's the common misconception of software outsourcing. The exact opposite is true. So like, I think finding the right team, finding the right resource that will solve probably 10% of your problems. The other 90% lies in communication, project management, international payment, legalities, transparency, accountability. So we'll touch up on all of that. So first of all, we're going to touch on the tip of the iceberg problem, which is sort of finding and vetting the right talent, right? Because without the right team, you're not going to get anywhere, right? So you need human capital, you need human resources to even begin product development and begin like creating your product. So so a few sub points beneath that. So number one, in terms of like how to vet your talent, right? We're going to have 5 total sort of points if you want to take notes. And of course, Nick will send this slide out to you guys after the presentation is over as well. So the first one is, vetting their UI UX design, seeing, all right, like, does their design style match like what you want to build? Does your design style match your sort of in-house design or your overall branding as a company, right? Vetting to see, how trustworthy does their website look? Looking at what they've built in the past, looking at how their website's designed, and then seeing, okay, like, would this be something I would be proud to call my own based off of your experience looking over that development firm site. So UI UX design, that's the first thing that we look for. Normally that automatically weeds out about probably like 90% of the firms, because personally we have a really strong design sense from our product team. They're very, very strict about UI UX design. And so out of all of the partners that we vetted, we want to have 10 global partners overseas. That's considered part of our partner network, but only and those 10 partners have been vetted out of 8,000 firms. So just vetting their UI UX design weeds out a lot of people. Second is reviewing their case studies, their overall portfolio, right? Different firms have different specialties. Some firms specialize in web applications, some specialize in mobile, some others specialize in IoT, others specialize in VR, AR, right? So you want to make sure that their case studies and portfolio aligns with what you want to build. So for example, if a company is building mostly education tech or fintech apps as their past portfolio, and you're in healthcare, right? That might not be the best fit, right? Or if a company is specializing in sort of a certain tech stack of development, like mean stack or merge stack development, and you're developing in Python or Django, right? Like that's not really a good fit either. So reviewing like their portfolio, going deep into their case studies, reading up on their case studies, and seeing how they interacted with past projects is really, really important here. So third one, US-based references. If you're based in the US or Canada or Europe and you're outsourcing, you're nearshoring to South America, where you're outsourcing to overseas to India or Eastern Europe, it's important to call up US references or any domestic references that they have that's worked with clients like in your region or preferably in your country before. So call up those clients and make sure that they have just a decent or a good experience working with that partner firm that you're vetting. Fourth is code quality. So be sure to review their code to see how well they write code. A lot of firms that we've experienced in our vetting process, they claim to write certain languages, right? So we want to make sure to double check that they can actually write those languages proficiently. Some firms, not saying all firms out there do this, but some firms do mention that they write a ton of languages, but they not be necessarily proficient in all of those languages. So reviewing code to see how well they write code is super important. So if you're non-technical, you can hire companies like pullrequest.com and many other companies to do this for you. Highly recommend that you do this because you definitely want to check what's under the hood and check, not just the surface level, of what they do as a company, but also like how they write code and how their developers perform. If you're a CTO or a chief product officer or someone who's slightly technical, definitely take one of their developers and do some sort of a live test with them. and sort of let them screen share, and so you can see how well they solve a problem or something like that. And then last but not least, interpersonal interviews, super important for us, like getting on calls with not only their upper management, but also getting on calls with their lead engineers, some of their senior engineers, and test their English proficiency, overall communication skills, see how responsive they are offline when they're messaging you and emailing you and stuff like that. Seeing how well they listen to you, that's a huge thing. Is important for these firms to be consultative and not be able to cut you off in mid-sentence, and it's important for them to listen to what you have to say and provide feedback accordingly, rather than just spinning off a product and developing whatever they want, right? And then the last part is critical thinking, right? So that's important because it's important for the firm that you're working with to not just be a yes man to you. It's important for them to critically think and ask you very pointed questions, ask you very what we call them power questions, right? That really unearth certain pain points or unearth things that you never even thought about, right? And that's where the true value of these partner firms come in. Rather than just taking orders, they should be there to critically think and collaborate with you as a partner. Okay, so after you vetted your team, then the whole journey starts, right? That's the tip of the iceberg. It's the beginning part of the journey. So like we just started this relationship. Now what? So now you're in the workflow with them. Now you're communicating with them through things like Slack and Microsoft Teams, or hopefully some sort of a project management tool like Asana, Jira, Basecamp. So number one is establishing a standardized workflow in terms of how you want to work with the development team, right? And it's normally good for you to take charge in this and not let the development team sort of recommend whatever they want. So it's good for you to vet the right project management tool that you want to use for your business, vet the right communication tool like Slack, Microsoft Teams, whatever, vet the code repository that you want to use, and stuff like that. Use Zoom, Google Hangouts, like whatever that you guys need to communicate effectively and work in a standardized workflow. Otherwise, things get jumbled up. So, for example, if you're bringing up problems on Slack, which is an instant messaging tool, and you're not logging them in your project management tool, right? That's the disruption in the workflow. And what you're going to mention in Slack will often get lost. Things will not get addressed, and then that's just an impending fire that could happen with your outsourced team. So establishing a good workflow in terms of, all right, we're only going to use Slack and Zoom for communication and instant messaging, and then project management, anything project related, we're going to log that into Trello or Asana or Jira, or whatever tool that you guys are using for project management. So establishing a good workflow. Second is sort of keeping up a positive attitude with your development team. After overseeing 150 different projects run through our platform, there's definitely a huge difference between founders who have a positive attitude versus founders who have more of a negative attitude and negative tone towards their development team. So always be positive, always try to be, as optimistic as you can, and try to be, as encouraging as you can to the development team. Not saying that you can't lay down the law and put down the hammer sometimes to reinforce certain behavior, but keeping up a positive attitude even during fires in your project, like that's very, very important. Third is developers don't perform under pressure that well. So a lot of times, some of the clients I've seen, the mistake that they've done is that they have a hard deadline, right? Even companies like Amazon and Google don't have hard deadlines for the developers, right? They have a range of date that they're going to deliver that product, and they try to hit that deliverable date as much as possible with a certain amount of confidence level, right? So don't try to add a hard deadline and try to add anything that's sort of a make or break. That tends to add unnecessary pressure to your development team. and the more pressure you add, it just sort of negatively reinforces that relationship. Negative reinforcement causes them to just think bitterly about you as a client, your project in general, and that affects overall performance. And then the last but not least, the most important part you shouldn't do is you shouldn't make assumptions about anything. That can be anything from scope to cultural differences. So, for sure, explain every single detail and leave out no details in terms of just explaining yourself or explaining your scope. So India is a great example for this. Like, you have to be very literal and thorough in your explanation. You can't use metaphoric language, or else they wouldn't understand what you're talking about. And based off of a lot of our experience, sometimes like they might not speak up in certain circumstances where if you provide something that's more metaphoric or something that's not clear, right, that problem might not be unearthed till there's an actual fire. So be sure to be very literal and very thorough in your explanation of everything that you do.
Awesome. The third point is scope and technical debt appetite. So your scope of work is truly your holy text. That is what you need to be super thorough with. That is what everyone is using as their baseline of assessment as to what the roadmap looks like. To write a proper scope of work, if you're technical, you may have technical specifications and different acceptance criteria. However, if you are not technical, people can have some trouble working through how to properly write a scope of work. And the way that we do that is through what's called a user story. The user story is basically articulating your entire scope of work as if you were the user yourself. So you put yourself in the shoes of the user and you're walking through every single feature and action that you can take. You break it up into module, feature, action, and sub-actions. So for example, if we even just look here at Zoom, a module would be the video chat feature, or the video feature. Another module would be the chatting feature. Another module might be sharing the screen. Within sharing the screen, the different functionality I have is I can annotate. So that would be a feature within the screen share functionality. Within chat, when I'm chatting, I can send a direct message or I can send a message to all. I can choose. That's another feature within the module. And when you articulate it, you articulate it as user clicks into X button with blank logo to XYZ. It's being very literal, very transparent as to the exact actions that a user is taking. That way, anyone, even if they don't fully understand, you know your business better than anyone else will. So it allows developers who don't necessarily know your business that well still get a good grasp as to what you're actually trying to build. Now, the second point is technical debt. Technical debt is one of the most important concepts when it comes to starting a business with software. So if you aren't familiar with technical debt, definitely pay attention to this, and we're always happy to jump on calls after and further explain. But technical debt, if you think of the iron triangle of software, you have quality, price, and time. And if you choose one and you're going to sacrifice the two. So for example, if you want a project that is to be delivered in a very, very short time, then you're probably going to sacrifice a little bit of the quality and your price is going to be really, really high. So different companies have different levels of technical debt appetite. Early stage startups tend to have a very high appetite for technical debt, meaning they want to write the code as quickly as possible. They want to get it out into the hands of users so they can iterate, they can test, and they're going to pay back that debt later. They're going to do what's called refactoring the code base. It's cleaning it up, it's organizing it. Whereas a company like Amazon, they have a very, very low thresholds for technical debt because anything they push live is going to require millions of users off the bat. And so they actually have internal policies of, minimum of 1 month of bug fixing before anything can be pushed live. Makes sense for them, but if you're a startup, you don't have the budget to do a month of bug fixing to see if your application is going to work on a outdated version of Safari on a outdated iPhone without Wi-Fi, as an example. So using a research paper to help articulate what technical debt is, think of a rough draft as a research paper. That's a very high appetite for technical debt. You hand your rough draft to a friend, they can read the paper, they understand your mission, your argument, everything makes sense, and they give you your feedback, and you just jump straight back into the paper and you make your quick edits and you hand it right back to them. It's very quick, it's very iterative. The amount of time to go in and make any edits is very, very small. But once you finish all of those edits, you then have to do a lot of work to put it into a final form. Whereas a final paper that you submit to a professor that is, let's say, APA formatted, very low technical debt. It's perfected to how it is, but any changes that you need to make, you now need to go read through your paper, make sure the edits match the syntax of the paragraph, make sure there's parallelism between, et cetera, et cetera. So it takes a lot longer to make those edits. It's a lot more costly in terms of time and effort. So that's really why it's so important. There's different strategies depending on what your appetite is. So really being sure that you identify what your proper appetite is going to influence the strategies and the process that your dev team is going to use for your project itself. So as you can imagine, if you're an early stage startup and your dev team is treating you as if you have a very, very low appetite, like an Amazon, you're probably going to get pretty frustrated when they're spending a month on bug fixing on something that you really don't care about. So it's an important conversation to have.
Cool. There's no global standard for best practices. So this is important because after communication, after technical debt, scoping, all of that stuff, then you get into the actual weeds of working with the actual development team in terms of how they code, how they write code, and stuff like that. So every developer needs to have a good process, good development strategy that they follow. You can have a really good developer, but that developer will not yield good results if he's not following the best practices, right? So number one is creating your own development process / strategy with your development team or your freelancer or whomever that you're working with. I added a link to download an ebook that we wrote here. Is completely free, and it goes over how you can create your own development process. So for those of you guys who are technical or slightly technical, so some of the examples of that process could mean could be something like I want a certain number of code commits per day to my repository. I want to use a pull request strategy where I reprove the pull request from the developer. I want there to be CI/CD pipelines set up to be, automating pushes to the staging server, right? So those are all development strategies. There's other things that we look for in terms of how the partner firm is leveraging a project management tool, right? Are they addressing any stale bugs and feedback? How long are those bugs and feedback left open? How many daily stand-ups are they doing per week? Are they missing any daily stand-ups, right? So those are all of the different things that you can add to your overall development strategy, development process, to make sure that there's accountability, that there's transparency in what they're doing. So that brings us to the last 2 points in a best practices development process is auditing process and creating a way to score your audits. So after you created your development process with your team, you have to create a way to audit their development process, right? So create a way to go in and look at your service structure, look at your repository, see how they're committing code. Are they committing code frequently? Are they using the branches correctly, right? Are they using pull requests in the right manner, right? So that doing so, creating that auditing sort of process, auditing strategy will create a lot of transparency and then will allow you to discipline your team in the right way. And then the last thing is audits have no weight until you have some sort of a scoring system or some sort of a audit report, a final summary that you can bring back to your partner firm, right? And that way you can hold them extremely accountable to a very good degree in terms of their performance as they write code for you. So, every 2 weeks, our technical team audits all of our partner firms with active projects. They give a pass rate for every single partner firm. They give a pass rate for every individual project. And that pass rate for us needs to go up. We need to see that pass rate increase every single week or month to month, or quarter to quarter, or else we're gonna have to have a tough talk like with our partner firm to see how we can help them better improve in their best practices in the development process. So all that's to say, if your partner firm isn't following a good process, you're being very, you're going to be very reactive rather than proactive. You're going to be reacting to a lot of fires that will come up rather than being proactive in preventing fires that could come up.
Awesome. And finishing it up, talking about payments. So this is always a sticky situation when you're dealing with a firm overseas or in a different country and you have to figure out how to pay them. First and foremost, international payments are super expensive. It can cost up to $50 per transaction plus the transaction percentage fee itself. So it might cost you, $45 for a transaction fee. So for example, if you're going with Colombia through Bank of America, it is a $45 standard transaction fee, whether you're sending $5 or $2 million, $45. Plus you're paying for any of the fees. So if you're paying via credit card and the partner firm is putting those credit card percentage fees on you, or if you're using PayPal and PayPal has platform fees, you're paying those fees as well. So it can get pretty pricey if you're not using the most cost-effective and efficient ways to actually be paying people overseas. Second point is that once you send the money, it's gone. There is no system of checks and balances to protect the integrity of the money you're sending. And that's one of the big scary points that people have when working with overseas firms. How can I trust that my money is being properly spent? One way is, if you have a good rapport with the team, you did proper vetting, you can hopefully trust who you're working with. Ways that we navigate these first two spots at Aloa, the first being we have our own payment platform that allows you as the client to avoid any foreign transaction fees, any foreign exchange rates. We handle all of that on our side. So all you do is pay it through us and you don't have to deal with any of that. And in terms of protecting the money, we avoid the treadmill effect. The treadmill effect is basically your devs are running on a treadmill and there's food hanging in front of them that's causing them to run, right? How much you're paying them. Once you start paying them less and less, they're less incentivized to keep running on that treadmill. Whereas us, since we have a competitive market within our own internal network, our teams know that they must continue to perform at peak performance, or else they're no longer going to be in our network and we're going to stop sending them business. So it's a way that we kind of force that system of checks and balances to ensure that the integrity of your money is protected. The last piece is being onboarded to new payment systems. So if your firm only accepts payments via TransferWise, which is rebranded to Wise, or your partner firm is only accepting payments via bank wire, and you have to go to your bank to actually wire out the payments. You are sometimes bound to the payment systems and processes that the firm has, which isn't always in your best interest and isn't always an easy pathway. So it's an important conversation to bring up as well before you actually engage with them to understand what that payment space is going to be like. And that is our high level 5 tips when it comes to outsourcing 101. Would love to open it up to Q&A and answer any questions and be of resource how we can.
Awesome. Hey, that was great. Both of you really appreciate it, and a lot of information there. I know that hey, you're all watching, you're listening here, and you got to have some questions. So there's a chat box here. I will repost just in case, but if you have questions, post them there. I'm gonna start out with I mean, geez, there's a lot of roads that we could go down here, but I think to sum up, what I heard you both say really directly is really around doing your due diligence, right? And having conversations not only with the teams that you're going to work with, but their previous clients, and essentially doing that sort of thing. And so my first question is around what's the best way to identify references and actually like have conversations with a potential or a previous client, and then what kind of questions are appropriate to ask?
Yeah, good question. So I mean, you're totally right in that first impression. It is incredibly important to do your diligence. Software development is not a transparent space. If you aren't technical, you don't have the ability to do diligence as someone who is technical. And one of the pain points of today's market is that clients are commonly pinned up against the wall and forced into a specific process because they don't really have the resources and the ability to choose otherwise and to push back. So establishing proper structures of diligence is super, super important. When it comes to finding those resource or references and asking them questions, first thing is ask the firm that you're vetting, ask them for resources based in the US. You can also look on their profiles such as Clutch, top good firms. There's a handful of different sources that you can find that people tend to write reviews on firms themselves. And have an authentic conversation with the person you're speaking with. Ask them real questions. Don't let them just serve as a sales front, but really try to get out of them, okay, how can we like talk about some of the pain points you had and what you recommend we do to avoid those pain points. Ask your questions in a way that don't force them in a position to feel as though they're talking down on this firm, but put them in a position where they feel as though they could be providing value to you. So saying, what would you do differently? What are some things we should prepare for? How did you go about your process? What were some of the things you wish you could have improved? Asking questions in a not as confrontational manner, and then just really assess their answers. Do they sound genuine? Do their answers sound like they actually had a good experience, or are these pain points something that are deal breakers for you?
Yeah. And then, let's take a step back a little bit. In your opinion, what would be the criteria or, maybe characteristics of a startup or even a team that are ready to actually bring on, going towards an outsourced option and ready to like actually engage with this? Like, how would you describe a team, a startup? I think budget is pretty obvious, but maybe what level is that in your world? These sort of things, like, just because I know that there's a number of people on this call that are either in that place right now thinking about it. So what are those points that are illustrating that they're ready?
Yeah, Dawei, go ahead if you want to take this one.
Yeah, I can take this one. So I think, yeah, we've been doing, we have a lot of people hit us up day to day, and we have to, qualify to see, are they actually qualified to actually move forward and get this project estimated to see, what their project would cost. So before that, there's many qualifications that we look for. And like one of the biggest things that we look for is, okay, like, does the person have some sort of a scope of work, right? That we talked about. Like, do they have very mature, developed user stories, user epics, featured boards? What's a really good sign for us is if they do have some sort of a wireframe, or what's even better is if they have the full design. If they have, full-blown prototype, 100, 200 different screens mocked up, or even 10 to 20 screens, right? They show that they put effort and work into actually like developing and designing the product, or maybe drawing up a scope document at the very least. So if someone comes to us with just an idea and they don't have a scope hashed out, that's sort of like a yellow light for us, and saying that, hey, you might not be qualified now, but we'll refer you to the scope handbook, the ebook that we have on our site, and you can draft up a scope document based off of that. And then whenever you have a fully developed feature and user story document, then we can come back and properly estimate your project. So So yeah, in the very least, some sort of a mature scope document. But if you want to go a little further, kind of doing a little wireframing on places like Figma, that's a cool tool to use if you haven't heard of that one. It's super easy to use, super easy to learn. Just kind of like wireframing up where you want to put your buttons and just general outline skeleton of what your app will look like. And then yeah, I mean, if you want to go even further after that, getting that design, and finding a designer to mock up a few screens for you.
Thanks. And, again, for everyone, feel free to be asking your questions. I'm curious if anyone has had, great experiences they want to share, challenges or kind of nightmares that they want to share that might be a warning to some other people. So, get that ready. Luis has got a question.
Yep. Yeah. So, Luis,
that's a very good question.
That's a fantastic question. And
so actually, before you get Luis, if you want to jump in here and just give a little more context specifically, because we are, as we record this, we definitely want to have the context and the question for sure post video here. So
you can ask him to unmute. Yeah.
Hey,
you might be on mute.
Scared to go on camera.
No worries.
Yeah, so, I was just wondering, I didn't hear the entire discussion. I came in about 10 minutes late. So, but I did hear.
Oh,
our company or any other company that has really cares about the employees' mental health and has that level of care about pay equity and anti-racism and things like that. We want to make sure that we are solid, front to back with that wherever on everything we touch. And so that makes, when we ever have to farm anything out, if there are layers of abstraction there, if you guys are farming something out, it's hard to make sure that those things are being maintained. It's harder to ensure that. And I'm wondering, you guys used a treadmill analogy with food, in front of the guy on a treadmill, and that's kind of dehumanizing. And I know that's just an anecdote, like it's an easy shortcut to explain something, and but of course it's not literal. But that does kind of make me wonder about not make me wonder. It makes me ask an actual question, not insinuate anything about you guys. But the question is do you vet for those kinds of things? Do you make sure that there aren't slave drivers on the work teams that you're working on, or how do you? Is that something that you are going to where do you stand on all that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's 1000% very core to us and our values as to who we're working with. And do they align with our morals and values? So first, looking at the vetting itself, one of the components of our vetting is looking at the team culture. How does management act? Do they have solid pay? What are the different employee type benefits? Do they offer different incentives, training development, leadership development for their employees? The reason that we begin our initial vetting with the actual upper management is because if we can really understand and get to know who upper management is, then we can better get to know who the kind of dev pools are. How are they actually running their company? So for example, when we work with India, India has a lot of firms that really do not treat their developers well. A lot of firms in that space, it's very, very cutthroat. And one of the things that we take into heavy consideration when we work there is looking at their working conditions. What are they actually paying their devs compared to market? One of our partners, they do within India, they do multiple team outings where they bring everyone on different vacations and things like that. And they have one of the highest employee retention rates out of any firm in India. One of our partners in Colombia, they have extensive leadership training and development programs that any employee can jump into if they want to further their own personal professional development. if we can't make sure that the employees are properly incentivized, then that reflects negatively on us. External motivators, such as money, can only take you so far, but it's the intrinsic motivators that really bleed through and allow someone to be a long-term, really good employee. And if we can't verify those intrinsic motivators, that the team, the staff actually wants to be there, enjoys the work, likes what they're doing, then it's not a firm that we would want to work with. And in looking at that, reflecting on us as a company, just to show the transparency of what it means to us as well, we hold similar practices with our business. So one thing we have, KPIs, key performance indicators. One of our KPIs that we judge ourselves on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis is a health and wellness KPI. It holds the exact same weight as any of our other KPIs for performance, because our belief is that if you as an employee aren't taking care of your health and your wellness, then you're not going to be able to be an efficient employee and you're going to burn out, et cetera. So for me, my health and wellness KPI is to meditate at least once per day, every single day. So 7 times per week. If I don't hit my 7 times per week, then that brings up the conversation of, okay, what do I need to do in my schedule to make sure I'm hitting my 7 days per week? And we do different.
We also have a sleep KPI as well.
Yep,
Make
we have
sure
a team,
everyone's getting enough sleep.
Team sleep KPIs. So it's a great question, and it's a huge gap in the current methods of outsourcing, in that one of the reasons why it's really hard to vet is because you can, as an individual, you really can only vet on so many components, and it's really easy to put up a front as a company, is to paint this picture of, oh, look how amazing we are, and then behind the scenes. So we've actually personally visited all of our partners in India. I flew out there and visited our partners in India. We had plans to visit Eastern Europe, but COVID. But I'll actually be going down to South America come August and be visiting our partners down there, and we'll get out to Eastern Europe as well, as just that extra layers of diligence just to really meet the team, get a better grasp of who they are.
Yeah, so David's gone. I went to India for a wedding last year, but like I got to meet one of our partner firms, the CEO. But David's actually gone to like all of their offices and seen their work conditions, met the partner firms as employees, their upper management and stuff like that. So he's actually gotten dinner, gotten drinks with these guys. So
nice.
Yeah,
that's a really, really strong answer. Actually, that's really cool to hear all that. And on top of that too, I want to say that, I've seen you guys involved with Founders Live for a while, and just being in the community and showing up and being involved with a group like this says a lot about you guys too. So thanks.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Luis.
Yeah, thank you. I have a follow-up question on that. Just really curious, with the health and wellness, how are you tracking that as a team? Is it personally reported? And then how are you?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just really curious on the way that you're doing that, because this is something we're definitely going to be doing. So, what is?
I can answer the sleep part, because I'm pretty passionate about sleep. So we use either one of 2 things. So like you guys heard of a sleep app called Sleep Cycle. We have to track it through an app. And then we all screenshot like our app, Apple Fitness or Sleep Cycle, and then we post it in the Slack channel to make sure that we're looking at everyone's sleep scores and stuff like that. It's kind of a fun way to end our all hands every week, just throwing shade at people's like sleep schedule. And then if someone wants to use sort of a fitness tracker, we like mail it to them, and that's like on the house. We just send them a Apple Watch or like a fitness band. And then they can track their sleep that way as well.
Got it. So
and
just
the KPIs is the other component. So we have a document that we just track what our general KPIs are. So if you're in sales, your KPI might be close X number of dollars in deals, do blah blah blah, do blah blah blah, and then your action items under each one are what you're doing on a week-to-week basis to get to that goal. So each week we review, are we staying on track, doing what we need to do to reach our goals? And the health and wellness one is just another bullet point. And so for any of the KPIs, if we're not meeting our goals, so for example, with, closing deals, the actions that you'll be taking would be, maybe send out 50 cold emails a week, jump on 4 new lead calls per week. If you're not hitting your numbers, we have a chat, we review what's going on, how can we help you hit those numbers. We have that exact same conversation. If you're not hitting your wellness KPI, anyone can set your own wellness KPI. So some people on the team, it's about exercise, some it's eating, some it's mine's meditation. So it's really whatever you want.
Yeah, so that's a good question from Heather. So don't a lot of employees find the health tracking by employer fairly invasive? Is it meaningfully opt-in only? Yes, it's for sure opt-in only for us. So if you don't want to do it, then that's totally up to you. But it's just our company culture to keep everyone's mental health and wellness.
And just to clarify, so it's not health and fitness tracking. The only components that we do as a team that we share together is the sleep component, just to see how many hours of sleep are we getting, to try and get each other to get 8 hours of sleep. The actual wellness KPI is totally up to you. So anyone can choose whatever wellness KPI you want. It can be one quarter, my wellness KPI was to try and take a full day off of technology 1 day per month, disconnect from phone, computer, everything. And not be pressured. You don't have to. The wellness KPIs are designed and meant to encourage and support and uplift. They're meant to support each other. They're not meant as an antagonizing component. If it's something you're not comfortable with, that's totally fine. You totally don't have to do it.
Yep, that's a great question. Yep.
Yeah. I've got a one going back to, you guys mentioned about, hard deadline, soft deadline kind of approach. And I thought that was really interesting, because I do think, especially less experienced teams and individuals can be like, oh, it's April 1st. It's like, deliver it. And like, the world doesn't necessarily work that way. So talk a little bit more about how to structure expectations and in these, like, really this kind of window of time of a deadline, the window of expectation time to be the deliverable, and then how to work with that and around that if things come up.
Yeah. So Dawei, I'm going to chat a little bit about like bugs and how they're normal, and then maybe you can follow up and tackle the remainder of like structuring and stuff.
Sure.
So no software project is ever going to be a straight line, smooth, easy, perfect, no issues at all. Software bugs, it means, there's any bug in the system, whatever it be. They're so normal and they happen, and it's about building the proper structure and the process to work around those bugs and make sure that you tackle them in an efficient manner. To provide transparency on that, Google Android's newest release, their latest release, 2,300 bugs were logged on their latest release, and that's Android releasing. They had 2,300 bugs. Amazon, a full month of bug fixing on anything they do before they push live, and they still have hundreds, if not thousands, of developers who are dedicated to bug fixing. Google's internal policy, they have 4 tiers of priority, P0 being the most important, P4 being the least. If you log a bug, if you find bugs on Google, and they have entire teams dedicated to bugs, if you log a P0 bug, meaning something's crashing, it's utmost importance, 48-hour turnaround time. If you log a P1 bug, tends to be around a 2-week turnaround time. If you log a P2 bug, 6-month turnaround time, a P3 bug, 2-year turnaround time, and a P4 bug, they're never going to touch it. So bugs are so common. It happens for the biggest and the best firms with the most brilliant developers. It's about building proper structure and practice to ensure that you're building a process to your advantage. And so I'll let Dawei kind of jump in and
Yeah, the second thing is like just overall setting expectations and having expectations tapered, right? So when your development team gives you like a certain date that they're going to hit, I mean, always expect that things will go wrong. Like assume the worst, hope for the best. It's one of the models that we go by as a company. So in software development, you for sure need to assume the worst. Assume that something like a delay will happen. A blocker will happen on the project, and the project will be delayed a month, right? So yeah, so totally. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked by the message real quick. Yeah, so taper your expectations accordingly, and taper sort of your investor / customer / user expectations accordingly, because we've seen too many stories happen where the founder addresses their shareholders, their investors, or their customers, saying that a launch date will be on a certain date. Something unexpected comes up, and they have to sort of go back to their shareholders, their investors, and their customers, and tell them that that the date's been pushed back. So it's always better to set a conservative date in the back of your head. Set an even more conservative date for your audience of your application, and then so that you can really exceed those expectations with your product release.
And just one quick tidbit on that. Bugs aren't always the fault of the developer themselves, right? Like software is always, it's an interconnected system. You're constantly working with other pieces of software. Let's say you have your development and Safari updates their new browser. Well, your web application may not be updated to Safari's web browser update. And you were building out the application, and on this old version of Safari, they just released a new update. Well, now it's no longer functional and compatible. So because of this external variable, you now have an additional task that you have to work around. So it's not all, obviously it can be the developer's fault, but it's not always the fault of the developer. There are external variables sometimes that you just can't account for.
Yeah, good. Glad that you mentioned that, because like I said, I mean, the world is random. It doesn't work is linear and as exact as we want. So I think the last thing I would say is maybe speak a little more about what you all just offer. This was a great overview of how to approach looking at bringing on an outsourced team. Maybe just a real quick description on why would companies want to work with Aloa?
Yeah, so we've spent a lot of time obsessing on the problem. One of our favorite quotes is, fall in love with the problem, not the solution. And a gap is that everything you see out there today is very solution oriented. Here is how you're going to get development, but it's not actually understanding what are the underlying problems to be preventative to ensure that you're tackling the problem, which ultimately will lead to your solution. So we have a three-pronged approach. First is our partner network. The second is our platform. The third is the strategist. Partner network, as we have talked about, we've vetted through thousands of firms around the world, really looking for the best of the best out there. We've only qualified 11 so far to be within our network. They're based in India, Ukraine, Moldova, Slovakia, and Colombia. There's different pros and cons for each of them, and that's our role to get to know you as a business and make sure we're pairing you up with the right firm that makes the sense for you and your project and your needs. Second piece of the puzzle is, okay, how do you communicate and collaborate with them? The existing project management tools out there, like the Jiras and Asanas, are very technical focused and doesn't necessarily provide the transparency and accountability that is sometimes needed, especially if you aren't technical yourself. And a chat thread is impossible to manage. We didn't like any of the tools out there. We used every single one. So we built out our own platform that's very niche, very specific to managing outsourced software development. So you as a technical or non-technical business owner can have full transparency, see everything that's going on, have an organized place for everything, know where to go, and manage your development team in a very easy way without having to spend your days focusing on it. You can focus on your business and know that things are going to be taken care of. You just get quick notifications, anything comes up. And our platform includes the payment platform. So you don't have to deal with foreign transaction fees, exchange rates, anything like that. The last piece is the strategist. It's incredibly important to have a strategist here in the US as your account manager, so to speak. It's building more humanity into the relationship. One of the biggest gaps of software outsourcing is really that there is no global standard for best practices. And what that means is that you have firms who may have great reviews, but they're developing as if they have a very low technical debt appetite. And if you get forced to that low technical debt appetite strategy when you really have a high appetite, that's going to create a lot of division between a successful relationship. So the strategist is there to get to know you, your business, why is now the right time to invest in technology, pair you up with the right firm, not only serve as an account manager to ensure that your project is being facilitated and you have someone here in the States to actually reach out to and communicate with should anything come up, but the strategist is there to conduct audits. So we build out that personalized development strategy and we do audits every 2 weeks so we can be preventative rather than reactive.
And so Jeff has a really good question. So I'll read it. What countries or areas would you recommend staying away from? It's because several Moscow-based dev houses have been contacting us lately. David, do you want to elaborate on outsourcing to Russia a little bit? There's a reason why we don't have any partners in Russia.
Yeah, so another complication of outsourcing is making sure that you're abiding by US standards and laws. If you happen to do work with a sanctioned company, then you as a startup legally cannot be backed or financed by a US financial institution. What that means is that if you want to go raise money, if you want to do whatever it be, and someone does due diligence on you as a company and you're working with a firm that is found out to be sanctioned, well, you may now have some roadblocks that you need to navigate. What does sanction mean? There's different reasons that the US would sanction different companies. The US has a more volatile relationship with countries like Russia compared to a country like Spain, for example. With Russia, tons of different industries and practices are sanctioned. And one of the components of a sanctioned company is if you have a majority ownership by a government official or a sanctioned individual, then that company is now sanctioned. Given the practices and a lot of things going on with Russia, we as a company don't have full transparency and insights as to the overseeing and managerial components of these companies. And so if we don't actually know who's running them and who's owning it, then we don't have full confidence that they might be a sanctioned company without us knowing. And that would jeopardize any clients that we have. And so we stay away. So it's a cost benefit analysis. It's not that, there's an ultimate right or wrong. It's about what your risk tolerance is. There's great firms around the world everywhere. And for us, it doesn't make sense to gamble that hard on a firm in Russia when we don't have full transparency if they, in the long run, would sanction then a US client that we have. So we stay away from areas that have a little bit more volatile relationships with the US.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. And I know we're getting right to the end here. We all probably have our next meetings happening very, very soon. So I just want to thank both of you from Aloa and David and Dawei.
Yeah.
And thank you both so much. This is awesome. Everyone in the chat, you can find the information. You can find their website, find the slides. And you can also find our next conversation happening next week at this same time. We have Founders Live conversations each and every week. So, thank you so much. There's their emails as well. And for everyone, thanks for joining in. And until next time, this Founders Live conversations, hey, stay healthy and stay safe, everyone out there. All right.